The benefits of cold calling exceed just gaining appointments.
Why so much body weight work?
Look, man, you don't have to lift a bunch of heavy weight to get strong. We were getting strong long before we had heavy weight, so hey, we can get strong with body weight. Easy. There's a ton of material out there on getting strong. Just pulling yourself up, squatting down, just moving. So we're doing body weight work to get strong. It's as simple as that.
Why are we listening to heavy metal while we do
Listen to
body
the
weight?
heavy metal because what the hell else would you listen to when you're working out? I mean, it's heavy, it's metal.
Hey, it's Anthony Iannarino, thesalesblog.com, right here, youtube.com/Iannarino, author of The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need and The Lost Art of Closing. And I want to talk to you about what you gain from cold calling outside of gaining just an appointment. So let's start with number one. The first thing you gain when you adopt the cold calling approach is the discipline to prospect. And what separates successful salespeople from salespeople who are struggling right now is their discipline when it comes to prospecting. And so many salespeople don't prospect, and so many sales managers and sales leaders refuse to hold salespeople accountable for prospecting, especially cold calling, and they're opportunity starved and they're not producing the results that they're capable of because they don't have that discipline. And if you make cold calls, you're doing the one thing that most people resist that also develops the discipline, because you find out that the first call is the most difficult you make. Every call after that gets easier. It's almost like exercising. If you run, then you know the first mile is harder than the second mile. If you lift weights, it's hard to get started, but once you start, you're glad you did. And that's what happens when you gain the discipline of cold calling. You get the discipline to prospect consistently, and that consistent prospecting always produces results. You also get a fearlessness that many salespeople do not have. And when I challenge salespeople and sales organizations, when I speak, here's the thing: you now have to be a peer. And if you're afraid of calling somebody on the phone, you are not a peer. So you're consumed with fear because you're afraid of interrupting somebody, you're afraid of somebody being angry at you, you're afraid of somebody saying no, and you feel like it's some sort of a personal rejection. If you make cold calls, you will gain a fearlessness that allows you to start to occupy that space of peer, because you're not afraid of actually calling to speak to the person that you need to talk to help them change their organization and produce better results. You also get an intestinal fortitude, and that means you might hear no 10 times. You might hear no 20 times. It doesn't mean anything. You can persevere. You're willing to be uncomfortable. You're willing to hear people tell you no and not think it means anything about you personally. And so you can continue on forward. And that intestinal fortitude is one of the primary attributes of successful people and successful salespeople. One of my favorite stories about Lance Armstrong, who has now been under a different sort of cloud since it's come out that he doped, and he admitted it. But what he said is that when it rained during the Tour de France, he was always happiest because he knew everyone else would be miserable in the rain. And the more miserable they were, the happier he was, because he knew that they would be suffering in their mind, and then he could punish them even more by putting the pedal down and making people work hard. That's the difference in viewpoints between people who have the intestinal fortitude to say, I can suffer through anything better than you can, and people who think, I need to find a way to be more comfortable. The last thing, not the last thing, this is the fourth thing. You get the ability to ask for commitments. If you cold call, you're asking for the commitment of time, and you're asking over and over and over again for commitments, and you start to feel different about asking for that commitment. You start to ask for it very naturally. You start to get better language choices. You start to get better strategies, and you get more effective at it. And selling is about a number of things. It's about conversations around value in the future. It's around collaborating and coming up with some idea. It's about value creation, but it's still about gaining commitments. And as much as we want to say always be closing is dead and never be closing and all those kinds of things that you hear people say, if you can't ask for commitments, you can't sell. And this is the first commitment we ask for, the commitment for time. And cold calling is one of the primary ways we do it, so you need to ask for commitments. you're going to get no. You're going to get all kinds of concerns, which other people might call objections, but they're concerns. They say things like, I'm happy with who I have now, and I think it would be a waste of your time to come out and meet with me. The concern that they really have that's underneath that is, I'm afraid you're going to waste my time, and I don't want to waste my time with someone who really can't help me and who's going to come in and say, wow, your kids play soccer, my kids play soccer too. We should be friends, and then you should buy from me. They don't have time for that. And they're going to give you the concerns, and the better you get at resolving them and get to yes when it comes to the appointment, the better your results. And nothing does that for you better than cold calling. You can't have this conversation on an email. You can't have this conversation on the social channels. You have this conversation when you're on the phone with another person, or when you're cold calling, walking in a door and asking for someone's name or someone's business card, or actually to see someone to ask for an appointment. That's where you're going to get the ability to do that work and resolve those concerns. When you get no and when you call and interrupt people, there's a little bit of conflict in this. And listen, there's a little bit of conflict in business. Mostly we try to collaborate, but there's conflict. I want something, you want something else. I ask for something, you want to do something different. And so there's some natural conflict. We're also displacing people, and there's conflict there, especially when we're asking a client to engage in conflict with us by letting go of their strategic partner or their vendor they're using now. If you cold call, you're going to get some conflict. You're going to have some people challenge you, and you're going to get comfortable with the conflict that comes around business. And if you want to be a peer, if you want to be a trusted advisor, if you want to be consultative, you have to be comfortable in that conflict. You can't be anyone's peer if you're afraid of them and if you're afraid of the conflict that comes with business. You're going to have conflict around pricing. You're going to have conflict with procurement people. It comes with the territory. But you can get through that if and when you make cold calls. And I'm pitching you on cold calls because it's still the fastest and most effective way to gain appointments. And that's the last thing on my bullet point list here that I wrote down in pencil is appointments. You're cold calling to book appointments. And listen, you don't win any deal until you open that opportunity, and you open it up faster when you call and when you get face-to-face and when you ask for that time over the telephone. There's no faster method available to you. And when there is, I promise I'll tell you, I'm not romantic about this. I'm not nostalgic about the phone, but I will tell you this: if you want results faster and if you want to grow as a salesperson, this is where to start. I'm Anthony Iannarino. Do hit the subscribe button. This is Everyday.